Why Bohemian Rhapsody is the best song ever written?
It's a song you've all heard at least once.
Is this the real life?
And it was probably not like anything you've heard before.
That's true.
Is this just fantasy?
It's so different.
I'm of course
Still.
talking about Queen's legendary single Bohemian Rhapsody, a song that even 40 years later is one of the most influential and memorable songs of our generation. But have you ever wondered why this 6-minute single that no one ever thought would be a hit became one of the most famous songs ever written?
It's the way it's produced and the way it's written.
Bohemian Rhapsody was a song long in the making, but it officially kicked into gear in the summer of 1975 when Freddie Mercury began writing it as an operatic piece titled Real Life. After the success of their last album, Sheer Heart Attack, Queen was given complete creative freedom and control over their next piece. And it's obvious that they took that creative freedom and ran with it.
Bohemian Rhapsody had a very rare effect on people, which is that it was one of those songs where the first time you heard it, you hadn't heard anything like it.
This is Erwin Fish.
Yep.
He's an Emmy-nominated composer and professor at NYU Steinhardt.
In my image is that it's the kind of song that makes you pull over to the side of the road because you go, what the devil is this? Very few songs have done that, and that did.
And he's right. Bohemian Rhapsody was different for its time and still is today.
Yes.
Unlike most pop hits that lasted around 3 minutes, it was a 6-minute pop single that has an opera. An opera right in the middle of the song.
It actually, in some ways, hasn't been influential because it was so fully realized that it was a little bit of where do we go from here. It managed to become a ubiquitous part of the culture and something that never gets off the radio and never stops in the karaoke bars and is used in movies, and it's all over the place because nobody has still done anything that sounds like that.
One of the reasons why Bohemian Rhapsody sounds so different is in its structure. The song is neither an a cappella, a ballad, an opera, or rock.
It's so different.
It's actually all of them in one song.
It advanced a tradition of suites in pop music, meaning not a continuous song, not a verse-chorus, bridge,
Yeah, the
structure,
classic.
which was the norm. A put-together
is.
group of different songs, in essence. So if people refer to Bohemian Rhapsody as a song, that's a bit of a misnomer. It's actually 3 or 4 songs.
Bohemian Rhapsody can actually be divided into 5 different sections. An a cappella introduction,
Is this the real life?
ballad, opera,
Thunderbolts and lightning, very, very frightening me.
hard rock,
It's such a great song.
and finally a reflective coda. It was also highly unusual for a popular single to not include a chorus, while combining different musical styles and lyrics. It is by definition a mind-blowing genre bender.
This innovation started around the mid-60s. It started basically with the Beach Boys and the Beatles. Beach Boys with Good Vibrations.
I'm picking up good vibrations. She's giving me the excitation.
The Beatles with A Day in the Life.
Crowd of people stood and stared.
Epic songs that pieced together different ideas into a cohesive whole. Queen in Bohemian Rhapsody took that idea and pushed it way over the top.
And to see just how
like they
over
like
the
to do with
top
everything.
they went, you need to look no farther than this operatic section of the song. The lyrics name characters from classical Italian theaters, quotes from the Quran, and the demon Beelzebub. And this section that sounds like it's been sung by a room full of choir was actually just 3 people: Freddie Mercury, drummer Roger Taylor, and guitarist Brian May. It's not just the vocals. There's harmony everywhere,
Yep.
even in the instruments that almost sound like echoes. This technique was heavily inspired by a production method called the wall of sound, developed in the 1960s by producer Phil Spector. He put masses of musicians in one room, 3 keyboard players playing the same part but in various similar instruments like the harpsichord or an electric piano, and recording them together to create a sound, the likes of which had never been heard before.
It's
And
kind
that
of
was
like
exactly
a layering synths right now.
what Queen
Yeah.
wanted to accomplish.
When people talk
Kinda
about
similar.
what a great song Bohemian Rhapsody is, they're talking equally or even more about the production.
To achieve the sound that they wanted, Queen used a technique known as reduction mixing, also called ping pong recording. Most of the pop songs you listen to today use a lot of audio tracks, each track reserved for different instruments and vocals, combining to make one song. But back then, technology limited the amount of audio tracks that could be used.
On tapes, it was different.
For example, Beatles' legendary Sgt. Pepper's was recorded on an analog 4-track record. And to fit more than 4 tracks in a 4-track record,
Had to
they would
record over it.
all 4 tracks, then bounce all the tracks into one. Record, bounce again,
Yep.
and repeat. The bounce tracks would combine all of the tracks into one, meaning if you raise the sound of that particular track, it would raise the volume of all of the individual tracks within.
Part of the great challenge of that process was that you had to make commitments to your mix. to
Yeah,
the
it was
blending of-
interesting. You had to mix it, like you had to set the volume before you bounced it, because in the outcome it would be a lot different.
everything as you went along. So you needed to have a lot of foresight and a great image of where you were going. By the time Queen made Bohemian Rhapsody, we were up to 24-track tape. By today's standards, that's still not many tracks. They had so many vocals and they had so many layers of guitars. I've heard that they had about 180 individual tracks
Wow.
that got put onto a 24-track 2-inch tape.
It's a lot.
But of course, this method of bouncing tracks came with its own challenges. Once it's done, you can't go back to just fix it like
Also,
we can
you
do
lose
now.
some.
2-inch 24-track tape that they were working on. It was a physical
you
process.
lose some
It
sound.
was a razor blade. It was an edit block where
Right.
the tape would sit there.
That's why we can hear when the vocals kind of start, when they click in the song. That's what they did, right? They put the 2 tapes together.
you would
And you
slice
can
through the
hear they actually
2-inch
click
tape.
in the
You
switches.
would cut out what you wanted to cut out, and you would splice it together with a little piece of white tape.
Yeah.
Now it's very easy digitally. You chop it on the screen. If you made a mistake, you can fix it. Everything now is non-destructive. Everything they did then was destructive. So
Yeah.
it took a lot of commitment and a lot
That's
of
the magic in
knowledge
it, though, I
and
think.
a very,
A little
very
bit.
intense, deep skill set to be able to piece that stuff together and have it sound smooth.
Just how much tracking went into the song becomes more evident when you remove the instruments to just listen to the vocals.
I'm just a poor boy. I need no sympathy. Because I'm easy come.
The harmonies in there are
easy
crazy.
go, little high, little low.
And before the Beatles and before the Beach Boys, a song was a song. It needed to be presentable on the piano. If you sat down and played Bohemian Rhapsody from start to finish on the piano, you probably would say, wow, that's really wild and interesting. But you probably wouldn't say that's going to be a hit that's going to endure for 40 years. What made it that had a lot to do with the sound they created.
And of course, it's hard to talk about Bohemian Rhapsody without talking about the man behind the song, Freddie Mercury.
The man himself.
Because this song was his baby, his brainchild. Unlike most of Queen's songs that were written collaboratively in studio, this was a song that, according to the guitarist Brian May, was all in Freddie's head before it even began recording.
Wow.
Freddie Mercury talked about
That's
the
incredible.
song in an interview as experimentation in sound. I think that could be taken to mean that the experiment was to see if he could get what was in his head, his sonic preconceptions, out there. I don't think it was the kind of experimentation where they went into the studio to just see what would happen, because
Yeah.
he was famously buttoned up and had the production and the notes and the arrangements and sound of the thing in his head. I think the experiment was really
What
about
an
seeing
incredible, like,
if something
person.
unique could be realized in the studio. An important reason that Bohemian Rhapsody resonates and has resonated for over 40 years is that it embodied something very intense, which is Freddie Mercury's personality and life. that record is an oral extension of Freddie Mercury's self-consciousness without shame. It's music, in some ways the sensibilities are out of the closet. As a performer, there hadn't been a Freddie Mercury before Freddie Mercury.
And perhaps beyond all the notes, lyrics, and performances, what truly makes Bohemian Rhapsody great is that it embodies what every musical piece should be. The talent and the drive to push boundaries and create something that brings us together even 40 years later. In a time where pop songs just all generally sound the same, maybe that's why we still can't stop listening to Bohemian Rhapsody.
True, that's true.
With just this one song, Freddie Mercury and Queen became something that very few artists
Such a
managed
different
to
time
achieve.
now, but yet we still love the
A
song.
legend.
A legend. That was a very great, insightful video.